Rachel Maddow, MSNBC's $25 million superstar, or at least that's what they thought. She was once the queen of cable news, pulling in millions of viewers for some unknown reason, mostly because she was saying things they wanted to hear, at least if they happened to be aligned with a lot of fiction that was being put out by the cable news industry. Her razor-sharp manipulations were the thing of legend, and MSNBC was doing pretty well prior to the Trump election in 2024. Because after that election, Rachel Maddow's ratings took a dive, which we covered here on multiple occasions, and now rumors are circling. Could Maddow actually be on the chopping block? Well, we've had similar stories before, but we need to dive into why we're seeing this again, despite some numbers that seem to be recovering. In fact, today we're going to be diving into those numbers, the drama, and of course the direction and future of the post-fact liberal media, and how it is likely to fare in that future. So, stick around, because this story is wild and it's all backed by hard facts, unlike the rest of the mainstream media. Let's get started. Here we go. Now, before the fall, Rachel Maddow was untouchable, a liberal icon, the progressive shining light of all things fake news. She had millions of people tuning in, so how did she become MSNBC's biggest asset and their biggest lightning rod all at the same time? Maddow started at MSNBC in 2008, and her show became a powerhouse for the network's left-leaning audience. In fact, by 2024, she was averaging 2.3 million viewers a night, making her one of the most powerful top dogs in the news industry. Her deep dive stories that really didn't close all the ends on the facts, and her anti-Trump rhetoric won Emmys and, of course, GLAAD awards because of, well, Rachel Maddow, and a loyal fan base who didn't mind being lied to each and every night. But that loyalty, well, it was actually quite tested. MSNBC's all-in approach to the 2024 election, and to Maddow specifically, with a $25 million a year salary, they set some sky-high expectations. And when the 2024 election flipped the script on everybody in the fake news industry, those expectations came crashing down. Because, well, I guess the audience realized they were being lied to each and every night. So let's talk about what happened next. And as I mentioned before, what came next was the 2024 election. And Maddow's numbers crashed harder than the reality TV final, which always seems to be disappointing these days. But did she bounce back? I mean, fair is fair, or it was the damage already done? A little of both, I think, but after Trump's victory, MSNBC's audience tanked. Maddow's show, which aired once a week at this point, which is not a bad gig if you can get it. I mean, $25 million a year for 52 weeks a year worth of performance, at least one day. It's 52 days. Oh, she was straining herself. Anyway, it went from 2.3 million viewers a night to a shocking low of 1.3 million in November 11th of 2024. That was her worst night of the year. Well, 2024 anyway. Of course, even worse news, which I actually reported not that many months ago, came down to only about 84,000 viewers that were in the 25 to 54 demo, which is where you want to be if you want to be in television news. You need to be in the 25 to 54 demo. They're the ones that have money and still can be influential in the marketplace and get you some of those, advertisers. That is how you actually survive. And yet, back at that point in time, her show was being beaten by a rerun of Ancient Aliens. Ouch. MSNBC's primetime viewership overall plummeted about 47% by December, down by 660,000 viewers. Why? Well, some say viewers were burned out on the anti-Trump garbage and all the narratives around that. And of course, none of that actually panned out, which cost them a lot of credibility. The fact that they still had credibility was surprising, but according to a YouGov poll, 67% of the people out there, or respondents, distrust the media completely because they're a bunch of liars. That's over 2/3, folks, and not a good number if you're in the news business. But of course, there's a twist. Maddow came back strong. Eventually, in January of 2025, she returned to a 5-night schedule, which I guess familiarity brings back the folks. I don't know. But it displaced a lot of other shows, and that led to some more displacements, which we'll get to in a moment. But she was there to cover Trump's first 100 days, which we're about ready to end any moment now. And by April, she was pulling 2.17 million viewers, still well below her peak, but it made her large enough now to be considered a star again. So, is she safe? Not so fast. This drama is actually just getting started. Firing producers, slamming the network on the air, and a $25 million paycheck is really under scrutiny right now. Has Maddow actually painted a target on her back? In early 2025, Maddow's president, Rebecca Cutler, a newcomer to MSNBC, shook things up, canceling shows like Joy Reid's The Readout, which I would say thank you for that one, and laying off producers, including some from Maddow's team. This caused a little crash out, a little temper tantrum by Maddow herself on air on February 25th. She called the layoffs indefensible and Reid's firing a bad mistake right on her show, which I think was pretty ridiculous, but her reasoning was much less the reasoning of any network. It always comes down to ratings, money, and public perception. That kind of boldness obviously sparked a firestorm, and it actually had X and other social media lighting up with speculation. Is this it for Maddow? Is Maddow next on the chopping block? Other people pointed out that her salary had been much higher. Believe it or not, her $25 million salary was down from $30 million. And of course, she became a lightning rod. Critics say it could fund 125 staff jobs, especially as MSNBC faces a spinoff to SpinCo, which I still think is the most ridiculous name for a news organization out of an actual news organization. But hey, what do I know? But let's be clear here. There's no hard evidence that Maddow's getting fired. There have been some leaks, but nothing that we can actually point to, and we want to stay accurate, unlike the fake news media. Her contract runs through the end of 2027, and her ratings are climbing. Well, climbing's a strong word. They're going up ever so slightly, but who knows? Is she going to go back to the once-a-week show, or is she going to have to continue to give us 5 nights a week of performance to actually earn that $25 million salary? Still, those X rumors, which oftentimes turn out to be accurate for some reason, and her public jabs, of course, at her own network, are keeping that question alive, and probably will for the next couple of years, at least through the end of this contract, which I guess leads to the following question. Is she untouchable still, or is she on thin ice? Most people are leaning towards thinner ice, but hey, that guess is for you. With viewers ditching cable news and MSNBC fighting to survive, can Maddow actually save this network? Or is she part of a larger problem? I think it's a little of both, but I think there's one thing we are all ignoring. Cable news is dying because cable's dying, literally. The number of subscribers continue to dwindle away because everybody is continuing to cut the cord. They're turning their cable into the only service that it can adequately function as, which is their internet connection. Outside of that, most people don't turn on the 157 channels that everybody seems to ignore, including MSNBC. Speaking of MSNBC, they're in a very tough spot. As I mentioned before, as kind of an aside, a YouGov poll recently provided more survey information that 67%, or probably now even more, we haven't done the numbers for 2025 yet, do not believe that Americans trust media across the board. And unsurprisingly, that same 67% of Americans don't trust media to cover Trump fairly. And MSNBC's anti-Trump brand, which I don't think anybody would argue is the name of the game for them, is not helping that situation at all. On an entirely different front, consider this. Fox News surged 24% after the election, while MSNBC's primetime cratered. Why? Well, you can speculate and probably be correct. Many people decided they wanted information and not a bunch of puffery to make them feel better, which is what all of the liberal news media seemed to have been providing during that period of time leading into an election they were destined to lose. Now, all of this was happening at the same time that MSNBC and others, including CNN, were cratering in the viewership interest. The network's planning to hire 100 new journalists are a bit of a corporate spin. Why? Well, because they have a spin-off, SpinCo, which I just mentioned a moment ago, that they'll have to staff up for. They'll need their own actual news department and stop stripping away what was coming out of Comcast Universal. Of course, with the need to hire that many new journalists, Maddow's salary once again is under a microscope because that's a lot of people. Fortunately for her, she's still their biggest star. Her 5-night return lifted other shows, in fact, like Chris Hayes and Lawrence O'Donnell. Who knows if they'll be sticking around after the final cuts are made for SpinCo. So there are some very big questions, but one important one. Can Maddow rebuild trust and keep MSNBC afloat? My answer would be probably not. Will her polarizing style drag them down? Well, I would say that probably will happen. But if you have different answers, let me know in the comments section below. And to start drawing this all to a close, you have to ask, is Rachel Maddow's reign over? Or is she still MSNBC's golden ticket forward? Her ratings obviously crashed, but they rebounded some. Not back up to her peak, but better than they were. And the firing rumors are still all over the internet, and they continue to buzz as you see inconsistency in ratings for her show. Despite that inconsistency, she still is the top dog on the top of all ratings for all of the shows, but could that just be a function of the time period that she's straddling? So, what do you think? Is Maddow's credibility completely shot at this point, or is she key to MSNBC's comeback as they spin off into some new entity? Drop your comments in the section down below, of course, and hit that like button before you shuffle off elsewhere. And do me the small favor of sharing this video out and about. I would like more people to see content like this, to realize that I don't always function in hyperbole. Most of the time, I'm just trying to get the answers to questions I think a lot of us are already asking, especially when it comes to the business of news, entertainment, and gaming. Be sure to turn on all notifications on the notification bell so you don't miss anything, because I do a lot of material each and every week. I, of course, am Culture Casino here on the Culture Casino channel. And as always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya for real.